Welcome, duckies and dice fiends, to the Chaotic Wholesome presents. Actually, it's not presents anymore. To the Chaotic Wholesome Table Talk Show, where we do stuff every week. We talk about TTRPG things, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity. So, as you can see, it's not quite normal. And that's because Kay is having internet trouble. And it is a perfect capstone to their day of having a bunch of things go sideways and or wrong over the course of today. Oh, what is this? Okay. So, hi, I'm David. And right to my is it this side is not Kay, because again, internet trouble. But even further is our guest today, Rayne Grimm, who is on to tell us about TTRPGs, Pokemon, charity, and anything else we talk about.
I know I won't make up for Kay being gone, but I'll try to fill the void the little way I can. Hopefully they get back soon, because I don't think I could carry this alone.
I mean, me neither. Look, life is not the same without Kay. We all acknowledge it. Yeah, the CIA have reditioned Kay, and we have to go find her.
Okay, so you know where the waypoint is? Let's go.
Right. Yeah, if only. Oh, man.
If only.
Baldur's
I think we've all wanted that moment where we just get called into action and we're like, get to go be a action star all of a sudden.
I mean, my first thought was the ability to just warp somewhere. Like, people are like, oh man, what would your superpower be? And all these people out here saying flying. And I'm like, flying.
No. Nightcrawler.
Right.
Instant
teleportation
or portals. Top two of my favorite powers.
Like, because I just want to be there. I don't like going there. I just want to be there.
That, and it's so much more useful. Hey, we got to move this stuff. Should I fly it there? No. It's up there.
Oh man. And then also you'd never have to worry about money because you would just like teleport into a bank.
Well,
Put
see, no,
cash in your
that's
pocket.
theft, and that means you're a bad guy now.
Look,
Capital is bad. I'm not gonna lie.
I would never advocate for committing crime. But if you steal from a bank, it is insured, and baby corporations won't miss it all that much.
Oh no, I'm not disagreeing. I gotta be careful what I say, but I'm just saying sometimes theft isn't wrong. I'm just saying that, but I am
Right.
saying you gotta be careful what kind of theft.
Right. Like if you're hungry, get that loaf of bread.
Get that bread, yeah. Well, fun fact, didn't France make it like not a crime to steal if you're hungry? Which fully support. But yeah, no, if you walk into somebody's house and like, I'm taking your TV, that's bad. Going to city multi whatever juggernaut bank and being like, hey, I'm taking one of the 10,000 you got sitting in a vault just to accrue interest so I could survive.
Right. And I don't know if it's France or Canada, but there is a country where it's not illegal to try to escape from prison as long as you don't commit a crime in the course of escaping from prison.
I think that's France because they basically said that there was like it is human nature to wish for freedom, so you can't criminalize the desire for freedom. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure it's France, which I can also say that sounds correct.
Now, what makes this particularly hilarious is part of why you're on is to talk about Pokemon stuff.
Part of it is about talking about Pokemon stuff.
Between Kay and I, Kay is the Pokemon person.
Which means I actually have to do the better task of explaining to you the ideas I'm talking about as a layperson that may not know about it, which in a way is actually kind of what my channel is about. A lot of the stuff I discuss on my channel, Fennec Fables, plug, is how to bring concepts and ideas into your games that most people tend to skip over. So in talking about Pokemon, I have to talk to you about things that you might not actually think about and then want to introduce into your own games, which is a good topic, actually. Yes. It's actually a good way of testing my ability to convey
an option. So like Kay, we've often said on the show the Venn diagram of Kay's games before Kay introduced me to Stardew Valley and my games that I play is the only place those touch is Final Fantasy VII. And what's particularly hilarious is Kay and I are both huge Zelda fans.
Mm-hmm.
And after Super Nintendo, the Zelda games that we played until she gave me her copy of Breath of the Wild were
never overlapped,
separate circles. And I'm like, how can we both love the Zelda franchise and completely avoid playing the same games?
Well, on a tangent, if we're going to go into that, the really cool thing about the Zelda franchise is somebody, I'm going to say this as somebody that doesn't play a lot of them myself. The cool thing is they've done such a great job of always trying to revitalize and reconceptualize what a Zelda game is every time they do it. So the reason that you guys might not have overlapped is because there's so much variety to the games that they make that there is generally a Zelda game out there for anyone. Not everyone, but anyone. Like, I personally wasn't a big fan of Breath of the Wild. I know I'm going to get shot in the comments for that one, but I just didn't like, hey, my weapon broke. But I did like the concept of like, hey, you using something that's electric and water, good idea. You holding something that's a lightning rod in a storm, bad. So stuff I enjoyed. But other games, a lot of fun. What was the wasn't Wind Waker? What was the one where you got to run around the dragon boat? I loved that one.
I believe Wind Waker is the boat one. Though also there are
it was a 3DS game.
Ones. It's a 3DS game. I haven't played any of the mobile ones.
It was the one that was it wasn't the one that had the sand tile. I'll look it up later. We're not going to hold this up trying to figure it out. Because Wind Waker was 3D. That one, that much I remember. Yeah.
So, tell me about. Ribbononza says, "I love it when weapons break because then I can throw it at a guy and take his weapon." And the name of the game is Phantom Hourglass.
That's what it was. I loved Phantom Hourglass. the that puzzle where you have to actually close your screen to solve it took me 10 minutes to figure out as a kid.
Wow, that's
There's
right
there's
there
a
with
part
like the Metal Gear Solid shit.
there's a part of the game where like you're supposed to like transfer it to your map and you have to figure out how to transfer it, and literally you transfer it by closing it, so it's like you're rubbing your map on the thing itself. When I figured it out, it blew my mind. But anyways,
Yeah, there are a couple of like cutesy little like fourth wall things in the Metal Gear Solid series that I always appreciate. The two that really stick out is you're playing against an enemy that reads your inputs.
oh, the one where you have to swap the controller to the other
Yep.
side.
And
Yep.
and he's like, because he even looks at your memory card, he's like, I see you like to play these types of games. And you're like, how
Is he called the Silence? I'm trying to remember.
Psycho Mantis.
That's what it was.
And then the third one, there's a sniper who
The end.
is in the chair. Yeah, the end.
The old
And
dude.
And he's like, I got 2 weeks to live. And so
And if you wait
save
2
the
weeks in game,
yeah,
yeah,
you
that
wake
one
up,
I
you're like,
remember.
you won.
You
I
won,
think-
but I won. The only other thing I remember that is like it's very funny that they have amazing moments like that, and it's like, by the way, you can heal by eating Doritos.
which let's be real, Doritos heals all of us. It may not be physical healing. You may take poison damage as you eat it, but it
But it
heals
heals
you
the
mentally.
soul.
Right.
It heals the soul. Yeah.
Ribbon says, yeah, I closed that one to take it to my dad and ask him about it, so I accidentally solved it. Brilliant.
I mean, I think that makes it better when you accidentally solve the problem.
But
tell
me about the intersection of Pokemon and TTRPG.
So I'm actually currently working on a video. There's a system called Pokemon Tabletop United, which, side tangent, there are a lot of people making a lot of cool new updates to it, but that's the one I liked the most currently because it meets that crunchy yet focused narrative that I love so much. It has the crunchy rules, but also has the simplicity of just like, yeah, you roll these D6s, roll for skill. But the interesting thing to me is in a lot of world building, there's these massive things that happen in the world. Like, hey, there's dirigibles, or hey, our world is comprised of floating islands in the sky. And then they never actually engage with how that would make the world different, if that makes sense. Like,
Yep,
hey,
absolutely.
our worlds are floating islands. How would that affect our economy? How does that affect how we get food? How does that affect socialization? Because you can't just pop off to an island easier.
Right.
So things like that, when it comes to Pokemon, it's like, how does the world differ with what Pokemon are? There's a lot of different ideas on what Pokemon are. A lot of people are like, they're actually like spirits embodied by like forces of the world, stuff like that. Some people are like, there's just animals that diverge. I'm not going to get into that tangent, but when
if they're spirits, how do people eat them?
They do not, and we do not abide by the Slowpoke tail theory. We do not do this. Don't make no. Team Rocket with the Slowpoke tails. I cannot believe they even went with that. But it's not so much that they're spirits, it's that like they embody the physicality of, like, for example, wheezing and all that is supposed to be like the human pollution and all that stuff. Like they embody the things that are around the reality. It's why you have Pokemon that look like buildings and stuff like that. But when you get to things like world building, I think Pokemon does a really interesting job of explaining how what Pokemon are affects the world around them. When you have literal Pokemon that are doves but have the ability to throw a wind gust at you, how does that affect how people live their lives? I think one of the first ones that jumped to my mind is in the show, at least, there is a place that is like surrounded by ghosts. So everybody has to have psychic types where they're trying to deal with that. And it's just like, it's interesting that way, where it's like, I'm fucking up the thing either way. But what you do to build the world around a concept and what steps beyond the first initial idea that comes to you is like, for example, we have a giant tower that we have to ascend, like in picking up girls in a dungeon. How does that affect the world around them? Instead of it's not just a place you go to get resources, it's an entire mecca of society. Mm-hmm. How does that affect the surrounding ecosystem? And I think it's a really important thing that people skip in a lot of games, where it's just they look at it as face value. And I like to go one step further and explore that.
I talked to my godbrother, who I'm very close with, a lot about Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then The Legend of Korra. And while there are a lot of complaints about Korra, some justified, some not, and that's a whole
I
different
think
conversation.
I'll
One of the
tangent with that was saying I think a lot of people were just mad that she was now a dark-skinned girl who they thought was
Yes,
a Mary Sue, and I'm like,
ooh,
mm,
yes, but
mm.
one of the cool things is there's this very natural progression of, oh, you have the power to conjure fire out of nothing. Oh, you have the power to move Earth just because you feel like it. Let's monetize it. And so fast forward when Korra is there and you have firebenders working in a forge, and like they just go punch a clock and then they punch fire into a thing for 8 hours,
The
and
one that
that's their
got me is
job.
there one guy picks up shifts generating electricity for the grid. I'm like, that is what you would do if you could do that.
Right.
Which is horrifying because it also speaks to how we make labor out of the most beautiful things. But at the same time, that's how capitalism works.
But to anyone who is a Joker fan, and if you are a Joker fan, I'm looking at you. I'm keeping my eye on you. But if you're good at something, don't do it for free.
Exactly.
Because capitalism evil. And we talk about Brandon Sanderson a lot. And in the sequel books to the Mistborn series, it is this this sort of like post-industrial revolution. Imagine America in the 1930s, where
Yeah.
like they're private dicks and everybody's wearing a fedora, except there's magic powers, and people use their magic powers for work, and it's like, and not only like use them for work, but he really thought out how people with these abilities would shape society moving forward. It's not just like at this point there are magic powers and now people have magic powers and use them to make money. It's
Exactly. Like there's a repercussion to that development when it comes to things like how do you have security when there are people that can bypass mundane abilities? What logics do you have to go through to secure things? How do you engage with certain aspects of capitalism? If some dude can turn things to gold, there's things you have to put into place for that type of stuff.
Oh man, I haven't had to ban anybody in a long time, and I'm really excited to.
Oh dear, I can't see the chat, so I don't know what just happened.
Yeah, don't worry not. I am on top of it.
Let's not give them the time of day. Let's skip over them anyways.
But oh, thank you. Someone beat me to it. Yeah, but we have the best chat.
It's nice when you have the chat can moderate themselves, right?
Yep. I consistently say we have the best community, and that is always true.
It is always true.
So and I'm glad the conversation of Pokemon's implications on the real world has come up, because, like I said, Kay is the Pokemon person. We were we were talking in the green room, and Kay is like,
here's all my Pokemon figures.
Completely filled out living shiny decks. I have bred so many Pokemon. And I have never played a Pokemon game. I have never watched the Pokemon shows. And years after it came out, I finally sat down and watched Detective Pikachu.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what anyone says. That is not a cutesy, loving comedy found family movie. That is
The thing is, it is, but it's on the overlap. Like the thing is, it is a cutesy film, but it's viewing how one person is doing a cutesy thing. But if you look beyond the pale, it's just a smidge, there's horrifying things. I'm going to preface this because I know it's the first thing everybody points to. Pokemon is not a fight club. It is not fighting dogs. It is literally exercise to them. Pokemon enjoy it. It's how they actually do things. There's actually been a very long Twitter fight going on. I don't know how much you guys deal with that, but there's been like an ongoing fight about how Twitter and Pokemon, all that. We're going to skip over that and say Pokemon like to fight. It's how they engage. It is their social activity. It's the equivalent of throwing balls to dogs. That's what they like to do. But when you looked at the movie, there is this whole thing where like there are corporations that will abuse the powers of these things to manipulate society. And the fear isn't on what Pokemon do, it's what we can do with Pokemon. And it's very much a story telling that humanity, what both can be beautiful, but it also has a horrifying twist to it. So you're right, it is a horror, but it's a horror film in a way.
So, one ribbon says, except for Pokken, that was a Fight Club, but I have no.
Pokken, yeah, Pokken is basically think Tekken but Pokemon. Really cool game. That one is a Fight Club, but that is Pokemon going, hey, I want to fight.
And not in a bad way. It's just more organized than other Pokemon stuff. But
exactly.
So for one, I've seen the Tumblr post where they're doing the math of Ash carrying Pokemon in the anime.
Oh, the thing like how strong he is, yeah.
Right. Where so it's like this thing tucked under his arm, very casually, very demure, 800 pounds.
Somebody literally had to do the math. There is a scene in Pokemon where he picks up a full tree, like almost like an entire full tree, and yeets it. Which somebody's like, this is several thousands of pounds. This dude is jacked.
Yeah, and he's 13.
He's 13. Cosmog there's always been a big debate about what the Pokemon Pokedex is real and what isn't, because some things will say, by the way, this thing weighs 900 pounds.
Right.
And it's like, yeah.
And so for one, those sort of creatures wandering around in modern society, terrifying to me.
Exactly.
And then there's a scene where in Detective Pokemon where the dude is like on the bus and like leaned over, and then a licky tongue comes up and just slathers his whole side with tongue.
Yep.
And I'm like, that would be my criminal moment. That would be what launched me into my because I would be like the Punisher except for Pokemon. I would get every weapon known to mankind, and I would hunt down every last one of them, and I would eat them.
But the fun, again, taboo, super taboo. But the interesting thing is, like, we're viewing that as an outside scope, but in the realm of the show or the game or the movie or whatever, that's the equivalent of somebody's like Saint Bernard coming up and just like jumping on you and giving you licks. That's the equivalent.
Saint Bernards are gigantic.
It is, but I was just doing that for the scale because look at Tom, just like yay tall.
I'd also argue that a Saint Bernard is not like a household pet. It is a creature you ride into battle.
I'm not gonna lie, if I was just a little bit smaller, I would give it a shot.
Right.
That would. But no,
yeah, there's so many different like Pokemon. Like, I did not know this while I was watching the movie, but like a girl had a Pokemon in a backpack, and like every time the Pokemon would freak out a little bit, she would stop what she was doing and like calm the Pokemon down. Apparently, that explodes.
Are you talking about Psyduck?
Yeah.
Is it the one that had like the big duck bill?
I think so.
Yeah, so Psyduck, it has a perpetual migraine and it has psychic powers, so that's a bad combination.
But if there is a Pokemon that explodes or does AoE damage or does 80...
You mean like Electrode?
Right. And you just walk around town with that thing? Like, excuse me?
You're just gonna have yourself strapped with an exploding Pokemon all the time?
Right. Right. And it's someone
there's actually been
carried an explosive.
We just had this conversation about explosives. Fun fact, David and I have both had to contend with explosives in our lives. I used to be a fireworks salesman, and they had to confiscate fireworks and explosives.
And it's just like, no, this is terrifying. Like, things that go, like, you go out on the, every year, July 5th, 6th, 7th.
The videos that they have to put up about, please don't hold this shit. Yep. It's the same ones like Thanksgiving. It's like, hey guys, don't deep fry a frozen turkey. That's bad.
Don't deep fry a turkey inside your house. At least put it in the backyard.
Yeah. But that actually brings us onto another tangent of like going back to the world building. What it comes down to the expectations of people with the parts of a lore. So in a lot of TTRPGs, people are looking at things from their outside perspective of what's reasonable and the expectations of it. So, for example, I tend to not like people having guns in my games, whatever system I'm using, because the moment you give somebody a gun in game, their mentality switches. They go by what they think of a thing should work, and it's like, no, you have a flintlock pistol that takes like 10 seconds to even shoot, let alone reload.
Right.
but their mind goes, I now have an AK or anything like that. And it's like, so it comes down to like projecting yourself into the space of a world. So to go back to Pokemon, getting strapped with a thing, and like I think it's telling because this isn't me trying to be a weeaboo or anything, but a lot of Japanese culture actually shows how your expectations of what you as a person are supposed to do for society. So like teaching young people how to go and do shopping, be respectful of that, which I think also demonstrates how they have a responsibility with things given to them and how they would handle things. So having somebody is like, hey, this is a super dangerous explosive, handle it properly, they would handle it a little bit better, I think.
Ribbon says, I mean, cars are pretty deadly, but those are everywhere and available to pretty much everyone. Which
we were just talking about this. I have been hit by at least 10 cars in my life. Either sideswiped while on a bicycle, while walking, or some variation of that. I actually have a scar on the top of my head from getting sideswiped by a bunch of college kids I kicked out of a pool at a theme park. I will not show the photo, but it is grisly. But we were just talking about how there is this big problem with cars where people think of them as normal and acceptable. And it's like, they really, just because it's been a part of our reality so long, people view it as just an expectation, but people mishandle them so much. Side tangent, I'm also very active on like biking and walking, like safety in cities on Twitter. And the moment you say, hey, maybe we should have a dedicated, secured bike lane, people lose their mind that you're taking space from cars. Down. Exactly. Like, I believe in New York, they had put up like bollards to prevent people from like driving into the bike lane.
Yep.
And then people were like, but what if it damages my car? And I'm like, then that means you didn't hit a person.
Yeah, that means that person gets to live.
Exactly. But so, we're getting tangented again. Where is K? We need K.
Right. But and also for anyone watching, when your medication says do not operate heavy machinery after you take this,
that means cars.
That means a car. I was like 25 before I realized they were talking about a car.
You were thinking forklifts and stuff, weren't you?
I was thinking, I was like, when am I ever going to drive like a dump truck or a fucking like crane or whatever? I
had to explain that to my mother at one point. She's like, oh, I guess I won't be able to do the forklift at work. I'm like, Mom, that means you're not going to be able to drive to work. And she's like, what? I'm like, what is your car? It's a car. I'm like, it is heavy machinery. But tangent wise, but back to the game. I play a lot of different systems, but one of my current favorites is Pokemon Tabletop United. It's a free online system. It's still got a very active community. All the stuff for it online is free, but it's one of my current favorite things to work with because it has such a great intersectionality of both the modern world, but also fantasy in such a really interesting way, because it lets you explore these concepts of like, hey, this is a 10-year-old. We want him to learn responsibility. Here's a rat that shoots electricity.
Right, dude. Wild.
And I think that's such an interesting way of exploring responsibility, but also world building. Because like, hey, we're teaching you about yourself. And like, this isn't going to be some giant thesis about how Ash Ketchum best hero everywhere. But it's like, the world itself is a great way of exploring how things develop. For example, a lot of people don't tend to think about what happens to the people that do it for a little while and then realize, I don't really like fighting. I want to go do something else. And then it's like, that's the world building as you go along of like, not everyone stays on the journey. Not everybody wants to be on that journey. Like, for example, in the show, there's a guy that used to be a trainer, stopped, became a salaryman, and is like, hey, I'm 40. I kind of regret never finishing this life. Let me go back to being a trainer for a little bit with a Venusaur, which Kay would love, but she's not here right now. Maybe chat can find the photo, but there's a really cool, he's like a punk rocker with a giant Venusaur, and he goes to be a trainer again for a little bit.
It's funny because I was late to the Jujutsu Kaisen train.
Yeah.
And when dude was like, man, I am a sorcerer, but y'all
I used to be a salaryman.
Y'all silly. I'm out of here. I'm gonna go get a job, make some money.
And then he
had a
realized the
job.
responsibility. And he's like, oh, I have things that could help people. And that's actually a good tangent of just like what happens when you realize that you can choose to not do something, but by choosing not to, you are leaving others to suffer. And so there's like this real thing of like personhood versus societal need, which is a really interesting topic that tends to get glossed over by ooh, big sword that most people don't contend with. And
I do love Big Sword though.
Big Sword is great. I'm gonna challenge you with Big Shield though. Just saying. Big Shield mean defense, but also I can bash you really good.
Yes, but Guts suffered and died so that he could have a two big sword.
We're not opening up Guts to this chat. I don't think they're ready for this.
Oh, but
we're that little freaky egg. We're
dark.
not doing that freaky egg in this chat. But so I feel like I'm focusing a lot on Pokemon, but that's just my example for this because it's my current obsession.
Yeah.
But just in TTRPGs in general, I want to have people. Why does it say Justin Timberlake? The thing we use for you guys to get captions, it just says Justin Timberlake for some reason. And I just caught it off the side of my eye. They're a fan. But PTU is what I was using as an example because it's my current favorite system to fuck around with. But it can apply to anything where it's just like the things that people gloss over to get to the next big moment when the travel to the moment is what makes it interesting. Like it's like I have videos up about weather, traps, the risk of losing something. There are so many important moments in any bit of media where it's like, hey, that thing we had got stolen, got broken, got lost. How do we deal with that? But it's a bit of a taboo to have that happen in a game. And so there's this discussion of like agency versus expression. And I think it's worth confronting a little bit.
Absolutely. And Ribbon says Big Shield Ren Xenoblade, which I don't have frame of reference.
Xenoblade is a really cool game. I've not gotten to play it, but I'm gonna have to look it up now if they have Big Shield. I'm a Shield guy, which is really weird. It's like a subset of Big Sword guy. Because like you say I like shields and everybody kind of looks at you like you're the guy that has a pet snake. See, that's the look. That's the look everybody gives you when you say I like shield.
No, Big Shield, perfectly permissible. And I'm not saying that it's bad to own a snake. I will say two things about pet snakes. One, they're not pets. A snake cannot be domesticated because a snake sits there and it lives his life cycle.
Don't you mean they lay there?
You're correct.
I will challenge that with, I have seen many a photo and many a video of a snake just chilling there watching TV.
Okay, fair.
But I will challenge you with that. They can be domesticated. I will challenge you on that one.
Xenogears. Yeah, the second party member fights with a big shield. So
love it. I love it.
And then there are people that own snakes, and then there are people who are a little too into their snakes.
That's the difference.
And I've 100% of the too into snake people that I have met have either been on a college campus or at a Ren fair.
Yep. So I will say that second part is really important. There's a different hopefully that I don't get dinged in chat for this one, but have you ever heard the term there's a difference between a kink and a fetish?
Yeah.
A kink, you like a feather. A fetish is the whole damn chicken.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people where it's like, I like snakes, and it's like, no, I like snakes.
Hey DC, we were just talking about fetishes, so you showed up at the right time. And it's funny because like as part of the kink community, and like, you know, we're an Ace channel, so we don't, outside of monster fucking, we don't talk about fucking too. But
I got my permit over here if we need to grab it.
Right. When you look up the actual definitions of like kinks and fetishes, it's not very different, but there is a subtle but significant difference between the actual definition and the way people treat them.
Exactly. Well, it's the words have got co-opted into this thing that's entirely separate of what the actual terminology is, which, as somebody that's also been a part of the community, I used to work in an adult bookstore and some other stuff. We're not getting into that.
Oh,
I've lived a very wild life.
Quick, sell me a rhino pill.
Wait, say it again.
I said, quick, sell me a rhino pill.
I don't have to explain to you why we had an entire canister of whipped cream in the case then.
Right.
But no, it's really interesting because I don't remember the exact terminology, but there is actually a really interesting thing about how a word then becomes completely separated from its intended purpose. And that's actually happened a lot with the kink and fetish community where something that was just a part of a thing has now been co-opted into a whole new language. And so you have to then adjust to that new terminology.
Yeah, and like people don't understand that there is a distinction between BDSM and fetishes, and you could be into BDSM and not be into fetishes, and you could be into fetishes and not into BDSM. Anyway,
literally, it's like, but there's a phrase I remember partly from just people that are both into kink but also ace. Kink does not mean sex; it is entirely separated from that. But people think one is the other.
Yeah, and fetishes aren't necessarily sexual.
Yeah,
which blew my mind.
When you get down to the terminology, it's actually really wild. This is going to be one hell of a stream for Kay to look at later. I have a feeling she's going to be like, what happened without me there?
This compared to when we were talking about Mario and Bowser and Princess Peach. And
you mean the power throuple?
Yeah.
The power throuple?
Right. And because
I have a headcanon. Maybe this is what you guys... I have a headcanon. Mario likes getting cuckolded. I'm saying it. I'm doing it. That's what it is.
If Mario likes getting cucked, then why did he go fight Donkey Kong to get his girlfriend back?
I'm not saying that he also doesn't like the idea of being beaten up first.
I mean, he does get his ass whooped by Donkey Kong. But,
that's all I'm saying. What I'm saying. Power play.
God.
But this is not the conversation I thought I was having today.
Right? Which he has a loss
loss win record?
No, chat says Rex says he has a lost rescue kink, and then right after that, Mimics and Misfits clips that 30 seconds.
I'm just gonna say you are correct, and I will stand by this any day. Mario has a rescue fetish where he wants to lose. That's all I'm saying.
Ooh. There's so many things I can say about that, but I do want to.
We should probably get back to the thing we're here about. Right?
One of the interesting things is Kay and I have talked about environmental storytelling. Both welcome, Starless Solid. Yeah, you came in at a good time. We're talking about fetishes and Mario, which is not the main focus of this channel, because the main focus of this channel is Centaur accessibility. But we also talk about Mario and fetishes. No. We talk about, so like environmental storytelling, both in there's stuff in the environment that informs the story, but also how important the environment is to TTRPG settings.
Exactly.
And it's funny because there are certain things that Kay and I consider absolute minutia that we do not keep track of.
Yeah.
If you are a ranger, or you're just any sort of like projectile-based class, and you have arrows, we assume you have enough arrows. Like, we assume that part of your long rest is you go to the vendor that sells arrows, or you go get the things that you need, and you sit down and you bip up a couple of arrows.
So, to go on this tangent, in part of one of my videos, I discuss resource management. And for a lot of my thing, it's like, same thing. It's like, I don't want to hold people down to like, when I say I want people to explore the world and treat it like it's real, I don't want them to sit there and do taxes. I don't want them to go tell me when they took a bathroom break. But I do want them to consider actions and repercussions and all that.
Right.
Generally, even in certain systems, it's assumed that you're able to recover spent ammunition, like arrows and bolts and all that. But if the game we're playing is instead about survival or horror, where part of the horror of a scene is the fear of not having enough, then that will be pulled back. So generally, I'm much more loose about that type of stuff until it becomes a prescient focus. Does that make sense?
Right. And Kay and I are, we're developing a lot of things, but one of the things is we're developing a module, and um, uh, in that module, it not only takes place in the desert, but you're away from civilization and you have to travel a long way, and so it's not assumed that you can walk 20 minutes in one direction and find a place that sells food, finds a place that sells arrows. And so that aspect of your your character, and that aspect of the whole storytelling behind the module, the environment and its effect on your character comes into play. But Kay is back, has internet.
Well, thank goodness, because we were going to start talking about some weird stuff again, weren't we?
Right. So I'm going to put on the Be Right Back screen. We're going to take a 3-minute ad, and hopefully by the time that ad is done, well, actually, no, it's too soon for a 3-minute ad. But we're going to put on the Be Right Back screen, and then we'll be back with Kay.
Sounds
in
good.
The driver's seat, where they belong.
When we get back, I will do a small tangent about traps and games and how they're important in environmental storytelling, and then we can go back to Pokemon.
Hello, Duckies and Dice Fiends. They're back. I'm here.
And we're glad to have you because we were left unsupervised.
Right.
It's this was very typical of my today. But I hear I missed some very fun conversation. So
We had a long tirade about Pokemon. We delved into some interesting things about environmental storytelling. I have an anecdote to talk about traps, and then I'm going to go back to Pokemon because
We're gonna talk about
I had to talk to David about Pokemon as a person that doesn't like Pokemon, and now I get to talk to you about Pokemon as somebody that knows more about it than I do.
let's talk all the
Yes.
Pokemon. As
So
I drop
cute.
my solid metal D100 on the ground and listen to it roll away, my downstairs neighbors are going to be very upset with me.
At least it's not a D4.
Oh
It's a
no.
full metal D100. I'm so glad it didn't hit my toe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would suck. But we were just talking about environmental storytelling, and we were talking about that module you guys are writing about the desert. So I was talking about how we were using arrows as an example, and typically I don't like to make people focus on them, but when it is part of the narrative, when it is a focus, such as horror or resource management, you make it relevant. So I've actually did a video recently about traps and how I feel a lot of people focus on them as a punishment or an HP tax as a way, when really they're meant to be an environmental factor in a puzzle that I think most people don't explore that. I think that when you're using them in a space, you have to confront and not just be like, I'll put a trap here just cause I need an encounter. And it should be instead more like, okay, why is it here? What's its purpose? Is it originally to the space, or was it added after the fact? And there's a lot more on how you can make the space tell more information with a single thing if you explore it as that. And I was wondering what you guys had on for that.
It's funny because Kay and I have spoken a lot about traps in things that we're developing, and I am very anti-trap, and Kay helped change my mind about that. And one of the conversations we had that helped change my mind was the fact that, like, you go into a lich's domain, like you go into
Their lair,
and
1 second,
you trigger poison gas or poison gas or poison cloud kill, anything like that. And that's environmental storytelling, because the lich doesn't breathe.
They don't have to worry about it.
Give a shit.
Exactly. Yeah. It's actually demonstrating the forethought, because I think one of the largest memes is just like people tend to not make wizards or anything that's like intelligence based as dangerous as it should be, because who wins in a fight, Batman or Superman? Well, how much time does Batman have?
Right.
Yeah.
Batman's superpower is prep time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's forethought.
His thing is really an exponential danger given the amount of time he has to prepare. And so it comes down to how you... Sorry, she was done.
Okay, listen. Many people have been like... Now, I hate billionaires.
You hate what?
I hate billionaires. Because...
Fully with you. We were just talking about how it's okay to steal from them.
Right. But let's take a second to talk about Bruce Wayne. Because Bruce Wayne's superpower isn't necessarily just, I have a lot of money. Because there are plenty of people that have a lot of money and don't do the things that Batman does. Batman's superpower is determination. Because
it is. There's a reason, not to interrupt you, when they had an overlap with Green Lantern in one of the shows, they literally showed that, like, he could have been a Green Lantern, but he chose not to.
Right. And
he has the power.
When Batman doesn't have gadgets, when Batman doesn't have, like, all the things that money affords him,
he's still a force.
He dislocates his shoulder and dislocates his thumb to get out of handcuffs.
Exactly.
Back when, I forget what the big comic magazine was, but they did like a whole series of like these heroes versus these heroes, and Batman is on par physically with Captain America, who needed a super soldier serum to do that.
The interesting thing about the serum is, like, it just keeps him at peak physicality. Bruce Wayne has to keep upping that.
Right. And Bane broke his back when he was in his 50s. Yep. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to walk again. And I'm not just going to walk again, but I'm going to be out here spin kicking drug dealers directly in the clavicle again. And guess what? A year and a half later, there's some drug dealer who's like, oh man, here, I'm going to sell you this thing. And then bam, The bat gets him.
But I'm
So yeah, I'm no billionaire apologist. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
just gonna point out, that yeah, he does all that and he has the resources. He can get the doctors to help him walk
Yes,
again.
yes.
Yep, he
But
does.
it's
So
not
he goes,
just the-
instead, he goes and beats up the mentally ill
Yep.
rather than putting that money into resources that
He
would
does actually,
help
though.
them mentally.
He does.
but he also
uses the Wayne Foundation. There, not to interrupt you, David. I'll point out I work at a comic shop, but I'm not a comic nerd. I just know this from other people telling me. But he has so many philanthropic things happening. So he has the Bruce and he has the Martha Wayne Foundation. He has all these other things going on. He's always spending that money. The dude has money in spite of all the shit he's spending it on, instead of because of.
I mean, he also has a $25 million fighter jet in his basement. So
Yeah,
so, yes,
he's not
but-
spending in equal proportions
and-
or
and-
effectively, clearly. Like he
and-
could
and-
end hunger.
I will say I'm not going to get into those logistics because I don't know enough about comics to back or say anything. I will say I only know that he does spend a shit ton of money on all the programs. I know he does actually have like a lot of like criminal like reintegration policies and stuff. Like I know that the Wayne Foundation actually brings in people that have a record, but I don't know enough about comics to get into that. And I know I've learned long ago that it's okay to say I don't know enough about this to talk about it. So
Well, I will also say I am 100% Marvel over DC, and I say that actively hating the Avengers, and beyond liking Marvel over DC, I also just actively hate Batman.
I will point out I actually don't like Batman. I'm really tired of superhero movies in general right now, and that's not so much I hate superheroes. It's just I hate what the corporations are doing with them currently.
Yes.
I think that they've made them both so dark and gloomy when they're supposed to be kind of campy, but they've also
DC.
kind of DC,
And
which
not
is
DC Lasser.
yeah. And then there's the other thing where Avengers and Marvel have just become they've become so formulaic as in to be comedic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's this big discussion about like fatigue and all that. I'm just gonna say I'm just tired of it. They've made it to the point where it's clearly just a money grab at every step of the way.
Well, it's funny because I am not a huge comic book nerd anymore, but I used to be giant. I fell off the wagon largely because comic books, when I was right as I was getting super into them, reached the era that comic book movies currently are, which is everything has to be a crossover. Everything you have to know, everything else you have to have watched all of these spin-off movies in order to know what's going on. And I reached the point of like, I reached the point of with comic books, I was like, and I'm done, right? Because I'd be in the middle of I read the really narrative comics.
Yeah.
And I was into these super like narrative comics.
Demon in a Bottle, stuff like that.
I mean, even X Factor Investigations was amazing. And then they were like, oh, nope, it's time for the crossover. So this wonderfully rich narrative would get cut short or
just
cut
full
off.
on stop,
It would be 4 episodes of mindless, jammed in there drivel with all of these other characters that I don't care about.
Yep.
And then it would, of course, it was always, and this is part of why I don't like the Avengers, is it was always the Avengers coming in and going, we're going to fix everything. And the X-Men going, maybe don't, because you're actually going to make it worse. And they're like, no, we know better. 4 comic books of them making everything worse. And then them going, you were right. We shouldn't have done that. We're going to leave and give you the privilege of fixing all the shit we fucked up. And then they go away. And I'm like,
it's like that. It's like that Sailor Moon thing where Tuxedo Mask comes in and is like, I'm here to help. And like, well, you've done nothing. And then he just flies off.
Exactly. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the Avengers are an evading army to the X-Men. And here's the other thing, and I've said this on chat before, and I won't go on this rant very long, but if there are mutants in the world and people hate mutants, they will not like the Avengers. Racists don't work that way.
Exactly. I will preface this with one of my partners is a humongous comic book nerd. Like, they learned to read because they saw pretty comic pictures and wanted to know what was going on. They are the one that I work at a comic shop, and they work at the comic shop that I currently work at now. They used to work at it. So if it's ever a comic question or a Star Wars question, I will ask them. Yes. And it has become kind of like a thing where it's just, I personally tried to read comics, and I started where you ended up saying that's where you stopped. And it's like, I couldn't get into it because it's like, cool, I'm getting into I'm enjoying some of this. And now it's like a crossover where we have everybody kill each other and reboot. And let's see how that would happen with this guy. It's like,
Yeah.
you can't get into it when there's no thing.
Yeah.
I know it's a bad take, but I personally think that part of why I don't like a lot of comic books narrative is that nothing ever has any finality to it. It's always got to be the next thing because they can't let anything stand on its own.
Yeah.
But that's a comic tangent.
I have said repeatedly, my problem with the comic book format is one of my storytelling rules is that what happens in your story is the most important thing that happens in this character's life.
Exactly.
And you can't have the most important thing that happens in this character's life over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
There's a running joke with X-Men in particular where the joke is heaven is a revolving door. The moment death means nothing, then nothing means nothing because there's no finality. There's no importance. The only people that die and stay dead are normies. And at that point, they're not important to the story.
Yeah. And it's just become a giant soap opera that you can't.
It literally is
really
it's soap opera for men.
I've seen wrestling.
Well, I say soap opera for men just because people tend to view soap opera as women things. So it's a soap opera, but sorry, that was a bad joke. I apologize.
And it's like, it's even more funny when you start seeing the comic book discourse around with a younger generation fan and an older generation fan. Because like, again, I'm going to get super nerdy here. And Ilaria, I cut my teeth on X-Men, the animated series. And that's what, I mean, I've got so much X-Men stuff now. Like that's the stuff that was so good. And there is, honestly, you got some of the best. If you watched X-Men, the animated series, you got some of the best.
The tangent with the 97 thing they just said, one of my things was like, they didn't kill off Morph in the very first episode. Sorry, spoilers, but
I haven't seen it yet.
God, because Morph has some of the best. Just like their entire thing is just like an exploration of gender and sexuality, and people are like, "Oh, it's just woke." I'm like, "That's the character. That's the point."
Yep.
X-Men
animated series had an entire thing with
X-Men this whole time.
Right.
Literally, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's literally just Professor X is like. It's Malcolm X and the other dude, just like differing political, civil rights leaders.
I'm so pleased. This is the first time in my entire life where it wasn't MLK and the other guy, but instead is Malcolm X and the other guy.
I'm just gonna point out that
Eric was right.
I'm gonna point out if my look hasn't explained my probable philosophy on how people get rights in the world, I'm just gonna say me saying Malcolm X first might give you a clue.
Yes.
But
no, there was
one of the major episodes. Sorry to interrupt you. Was just I'm gonna lose it if I don't say it. One of the major episodes was Rogue's own father getting into how she couldn't have been a mutant, and then like this whole thing, which was like clear allegory for being gay. And it's like, guys, all of it's been about being gay and about being a person of color and a minority. That's literally the entire show.
Yep.
Literally the entire show.
Yep. And people didn't get it. But one of my favorite like gaps that I ever saw was someone was upset with Kitty Pryde, who like Kitty Pryde, I know she's divisive within the fandom, but as a young girl reading comics, Kitty Pryde really spoke to me because I wasn't Jubilee level of
Poppy and
pixie dream girl.
Right.
Yeah.
I was definitely not.
Can we?
It's so weird to me that Jubilee's a vampire now.
What?
Jubilee's a vampire now and has a baby. It's not.
We have the side tangent about dreamy pixie dream girl later, but anyways.
So, this was at the point in the X-Men where Emma Frost had taken over the school, and Kitty was throwing some fucking sass at Frost, as is deserved. And a fan is like, I can't get over how rude Kitty Pryde is. She is so disrespectful. How can anyone support
Emma
this
Frost?
character? And that's the thing, is it's like, oh, dear baby fan, do you not realize Emma Frost literally tortured Kitty? Literally mentally tortured Kitty for years. She has every right. She is behaving. But there's that gap, and you can't blame fans for not knowing it because it's 60.
So split. They're so hard to follow the continuity.
So,
But we're
it
going on a
is.
comic tangent, which is
Yes.
going to go sideways. It's funny. I almost want to call my partner and just be like, I need to tag team you in because you know more than I do. But again, like the whole Malcolm X civil rights leader, like literally that's the entire point of a lot of just that comic in general. But in general, a lot of comics had a humongous focus on. Hopefully I'm going to say this and then we can transfer back to TTRPGs, the space I actually know something about. But for example, Jack Kirby, fun story. I might need somebody to correct me in the chat. They can check it up. But I distinctly remember there was a guy that came to their I don't want to say studio, but like where they worked, and I think he was a Nazi or something to that thing, and he literally walked down, knocked him out, and then went back to work. That is what comics are about.
Man.
Comics are about the expression
Mhm.
and conveyance of a story and morality. And a lot of people just look at it very similar in a way to like they do with TTRPGs, where might equals right, big fight, real cool, instead of exploring what people are saying with those fights.
Yeah.
A lot of reasons people use big fights in TTRPGs instead of like, let's talk out our issues is because, well, one, it's more dramatic and engaging as a visual medium, but it's also the fight isn't just a fight. It's a display of the process in a way,
And,
showing how things ebb and flow in a way. At least that's how I view it.
well, yeah, as David knows, I love a big fight scene, and I love creative uses of spell. Like we've spent a lot of time on this channel talking about. I prefer systems with a little crunch. I don't need 3.0. I don't need 3.5. I don't need 4. Right? I don't need that level of crunch.
As somebody that's played those, I will say I don't miss them very much.
Yeah,
the splat books alone were a pain.
Yeah. I like some crunch simply because I like to know the world and my abilities well enough that I can be like, I recognize this is not rules written, but hear me out, right? I want to know when I'm spinning some BS.
Exactly. I don't know if you've got if I keep interrupting you, I apologize. Please tell me off. I'll do it just because I'm excited and I haven't got the nerd talk in a while. But one of my big things is I love rules. I like structure, which is weird coming from this getup. But I like structure when it comes to games because one of the great things about games in general is when people come to a game, they all acknowledge a reality. Everybody walks in with the exact same ability, and then everybody gets to work together. So I like rules and structure. I have this thing with like I like rule of cool when it isn't an expectation.
Right.
And that's been a big problem lately with it, is just like it's less of a let's make a cool moment and let's make this a thing that happens all the time.
Yeah. And I was just talking in our Discord about and let me be clear, everything I'm saying is a me thing. I'm not saying, I will never say this is categorically bad because it does not appeal specifically to me.
If
Well,
you
yeah,
do not
everybody
agree
plays
with Kay, you are wrong, and I will fight you.
I will watch and sell
ticket.
ticket.
I am a very big fan of Dimension 20. I have watched every TTRPG thing Dimension 20 has put out.
Same.
I have had so much trouble, and I am really glad that Never Stop Blowing Up is over. Because the further we got into that season, the more out of control everything got, and the more my brain was just turning off because I'm like, it's not a game anymore.
So I guess the cool thing is like I fully agree with you, and I agree with a lot of parts of it. I think part of what Never Stop Blowing Up was an exploration of that exact issue, because the entire point of Never Stop Blowing Up is here's what happens when you just keep making things one up.
Right.
And I think that was like sorry again.
Yeah.
It's part of why I like the exploration, because I think it was also them examining it a little themselves of like, hey, we've had some really wild moments. Hello, Hilda. Hello, ribbon wand flying. Hello, roll for ghosts. And it's like, what happens when you remove the ground from a moment?
Right.
When you no longer have a base, that's what happens.
And like, I did know what I was getting into into, right? Because they made it very clear. This is an action movie.
Yeah.
Right. This is an
It's
exploding
an 80s
dice
action
system.
movie.
Right. Like, and let's be clear, as David knows, I don't like action movies. They're not my thing. I get bored in chase scenes, in car chase scenes. Like, I get bored. So by the time this
Baby
was really
cam and all that
up,
shit.
yeah, my brain, it was just like, it just kept shutting off because I'm like, okay, let me know when you're back to plot. And don't get me wrong, Never Stop Blowing Up had some of the funniest moments in a Dimension 20 I have ever seen. Ever. Watching Izzy nearly die multiple times, watching Brennan just look at her and be like, you can know things. You're the only one deciding that you don't know this, right? Like, it was great.
Yeah.
But by the second to last and final episode, I'm like, okay, can we just
The
be
White
done?
House is flying.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm done. Like, we just went Super Saiyan and there's a Transformer. I'm really done. Like,
So I got to be careful what I say, because there is a part of me deep in my soul that hopes one day that I might get to do something with Dimension 20. I know it'll never happen, but
I mean,
if
look,
I do, I don't want them to go like, okay, let's see what kind of Percy is. Oh, he made this comment this year.
Look, David and I, as people in chat know, David and I are part of the D&D Creators Program. We criticize WotC. We try to be kind and balanced about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I will say openly, I love Dimension 20. This wasn't for me. There are reasons it's not for me. There are multiple reasons it's not for me. And again, I'm not saying it's bad. And I think it is obviously, don't just jump on a hater train and be a jerk.
Exactly.
Jerk. That's not what we do here. But there is value in examining, like, this was not for me. This is why it's not for me.
There's a really important thing when it comes to exploring media in general, where it's, here is what I liked and here's what I don't like. And I don't want to go with the comment sandwich on any of that. It's just important to know how to give a criticism as much as how to give a compliment.
Right.
You can say you didn't like a thing, but if you just go, this was trash, and if you like it, you're trash, that's not helping anyone.
Yes.
So, for example, I love Dimension 20, and if anybody from Dimension 20 watches this, know that I tried to get tickets, but I could not afford to. But there are a lot of moments where things happen in the show where it's just like, it's not funny, or it goes, and part of me has to realize that it's not meant to be funny to me, it's meant to be funny to people at the table.
Yeah.
But it's also me going, this is also supposed to be media that people enjoy, and it's not fun, if that makes sense. Like, this is gonna sound
I love Dimension 20.
I love Dimension 20.
Dimension 20.
I don't have my bag with me right now, but I literally have the welcome to thing, when you're queer, your family.
Yeah, I have that one, and I also have so much love to give exclusively to cats.
I literally have this mug because, again, if this look doesn't explain my current thought process on the world, that might be it. But
and that is one of the really important things that we try to do on this channel, and that we try to put out there, is you can and should be respectfully critical of things. And it is also important to watch things you don't enjoy, to read things you don't necessarily enjoy. Because again, if I hadn't watched Never Stop Blowing Up, if I hadn't played several game systems that I don't enjoy, I couldn't sit back and go, okay, I just like these things for this reason, right? Yeah. I am not a big fan of Powered by the Apocalypse. It took me a long time to figure out why. It's because I don't like the bell curve on those dice and how the game is so weighted against you. There are other things I don't like about it, but that is the primary thing for me.
Interesting enough, I'm also not a fan of it myself. People make amazing things with it. I actually did a really cool interview with 5 Point Games. They're doing a Pokemon-like PBTA expansion, by the way. Shout out to them, because they were really cool to talk with me. But I personally don't like PBTA because I feel that it's a little bit too loose in how things go. And that bell curve, as you said, really ricochets you back and forth. And it feels less fun for me. Yeah. But for a Dimension 20 thing before we pop back, it's just... For example, one of my favorite things is I love murder mysteries. Murder mystery is probably my favorite thing. And as much as I love Dimension 20, they had, I'll say had/have, because it's quite possible that they're going away from it now, an issue where they didn't use systems that matched what they wanted to do. And Mice and Murder is an incredible example of great idea, awful system. You can't do that with D&D. And so, like, you can, but it's not what it's for. It's like, I had a conversation a while back where it's like, you can make D&D a lot of things. I can make my toaster a blender. Doesn't mean it'll do a good job. But it's one of those shows where, like, I should have loved it, and I try to like it in spite of it. And the ending to that one means I never can watch it again because I hated it so much. And it's... I think maybe it's just I don't get Reika's humor, but because it's also like the arm snapping thing from Never Stop Blowing Up. It's just like, they go so loose, which was funny because Allie is usually known as the one that goes wild, and Allie was the one holding it back. Allie was the one like, let's focus, guys. But sorry, we're going on a tangent again.
It's totally fine.
That's what we do.
But yeah, I love Dimension 20. Hey guys, if you see this, I literally finally tracked down a Jawbone figurine that I've wanted for years.
Oh.
Cost me more than I'd like. I don't have any more fun money. Please buy my merch. But Pokemon.
Real quick though, do you watch Breaking News at all?
The other thing from Dropout?
Yeah.
I do on occasion, yes.
So you should watch, there's one called Grant Explains D&D.
I will have to look that one up after this is done.
You watch that one, David. It is amazing. Yeah, Beardsley being the voice of reason is a wild thing and great to see.
I think they do give Grant the business quite a bit. He deserves it, though. He deserves it.
This is Abria and Erika Ishii and Beardsley giving Grant the business about D&D.
I love it, and I am down for it.
And there is a moment, and David saw there is a moment where Abria locks in. Like up until that moment, like it's the teleprompter getting him. For those of you who don't know, Breaking News, there are teleprompters that go up. Everyone has to read what's on the teleprompter. They don't know what's going to come up. It's a fake news show, and if they laugh, they lose points.
Last one standing wins.
But there's a point where it stops being the teleprompter, and
she just has to be like,
Abria's
no, I need to read some shit to this man.
Abria like reads the thing. She's like, yes, Grant, do it. Like it becomes personal in that moment. And it's like, ooh, predator mode engaged. I'm so locked in.
Side tangent, as much as I love Brennan, if I had to pick like my top 3 for people I ever wanted to play a game with, it's Brennan, Abria twice. She has such this. I'm not normally a Regency person. Faye and Flowers got me into Regency because of how amazing she did a job with that.
And if you have
Abria is not. People need to sing Abria's praises more. She needs God damn it. The stuff she did with the Kids on Bike system made me cry laugh. But anyway, I'm gonna talk up their praises too much.
Pokemon quickly, because we are nearing the end of our time, even though I just got here.
No worries. So I'd gotten into Pokemon as an example instead of like Pokemon Tabletop United. A lot of fun. Highly recommend it. I'm hopefully going to be doing a charity game around my region using it. It's going to be a very simplified version because it's a very crunchy system. But I thought it'd be a very fun Haunted Mansion-esque game where you could be like, hey, you guys are Pokemon trainers. You're lost in the woods. You need a respite for the night. You walk into a mansion filled with ghost Pokemon, which I'm going to use as an excuse to both have fun ghost Pokemon, but also make it kind of Resident Evil, where there's puzzles that exist because the ghosts are bored. So that's how you make narrative storytelling, where it's like, what would happen if a bunch of Pokemon who have a semblance of intelligence were bored and knew that people wandered through sometimes? What would they do to entertain themselves? So narrative storytelling is an important crux for me. I liked the idea of like, how do I write a little one shot that's going to last about 4 hours? What things would Pokemon find interesting? How would they manipulate their powers? And how do you, I don't know if you guys have ever played Pokemon Tabletop United, but it does what I've always wanted in a video game where it's your trainer can do those cool specialization things. Like, oh, you want to raise dragon Pokemon. You are better. You power up dragons a certain way. Oh, here's how you be an ace trainer. Here's how you do the thing. You want to be a little ghost girl? Here's ghost girl powers. But I want to explore in my games and in my content on Fennec Fables, a lot of my stuff is going to be discussing how do you take yourself one step beyond the face value. Whether everybody goes like, okay, it's a sunny day, or it's a cloudy day, or it's a rainy day. Cool. But what does that do for you? Not just mechanically like, oh, it's rainy, it's muddy, or slower. What does that affect around the world? People behave differently when things are different. We were talking about how a lot of amazing media has people losing things. The ring gets lost, and that starts the entire book. What do you do to make it so that people losing materials or damaging things in your games, and how do you both respectfully, how do you respect player agency, but also still have that as a factor?
Have you watched Pokemon Generations?
Yes, a little bit. Assume that I have touched just about everything. Like,
So
I have an
you have-
approximate knowledge of many a thing.
if you have not watched it, first off, anyway, Pokemon Generations is basically a Pokemon animation for adults. Like it's
Oh,
like
are you
adult
talking about the
adult.
4-part series?
No, there's a series of short vignettes. They're all short standalone Pokemon cartoons.
Yep.
And one of them involves entering a haunted a mansion haunted.
Oh,
by
I know the
Pokemon.
one you're talking about now. It's like the
They're
one that
so
has to
good
go
at the creepy Chansey.
the flute solo person and all that. I know the one you're talking about. I have seen it. Like the name
So
escaped
good.
me. That was actually part of the inspiration.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm like, ooh, if that's because that creepy Chansey.
My
Big time,
plan
are
was
you?
actually so I was gonna try to bring some classics like Ghastly, Haunter, Gengar, Miss Magius, who does not get enough love. She does not get enough love. But I was also going to use Golurk, and my plan was actually to have something pretending to be a normal Pokemon that they were going to like have as a guide, and then it was going to adjust. This is going to be planned.
Very fun.
But it is terrifying. But it's all an excuse to just see like if you had a world filled with Pokemon, the world would behave differently than what we perceive. Me and David were actually talking about like the bus scene in Pokemon Pikachu Detective Pikachu, where he gets licked by a Lickitung.
That happens.
David loved that movie. That was David's favorite movie. David watched it 3 times back to back to back.
Did he?
Look, that movie unnerved me again. Like Kay, when we were talking about it earlier, I was like, it's this like cutesy, like finds his dad. No, it's a horror movie. It is a deep, unrelenting horror movie.
And that was actually, I very much agree. Like, you're currently looking at a horror movie from the perspective of a person who is not being affected by the horror. He is doing a detective movie above what is a horror movie, because there's a lot of messed up stuff. Like it is the horror of what happens in a world where people have power and abuse it, which is reality. But this one has power that's easily accessible if you walk 10 feet out into the woods and snag yourself something with power.
Well, it's like I have long wanted to run a game set in the world of Jen Henson's Labyrinth. Have an idea. I know exactly what I want to do for it. Problem is, you have to find the right players, because you have to understand, if you're playing in a Labyrinth game, you have to play it like you're in a horror game.
Yes, thank you. There's been a long talk I've had about, I always feel like I'm referencing back to other shit I've talked about because I just so much. But when you're making a game, or well, actually that works out with my flag in the background.
Yes.
When you are making a game, you have to. I made an entire video about how to be a better player, and a lot of it was just working with your game GM or game master or dungeon master or prompter or whatever the system has, and realizing that they have a vision and so do you. And so you have to work together to complete it, because it is very likely that people will make a character for a game that doesn't match what you're going for. And it's like, people think Labyrinth and they think, oh, cutesy, here's some weird puppets. I'm like, no, it's really actually kind of spooky. If we weren't hearing the songs diegetically, it'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've many a time tried to run a horror game, and there's only so many times you can try to make the atmosphere when nobody else wants the atmosphere. It's like, this dark, creepy being descends from the ceiling, its bones creaking and breaking in place. And it's like, ooh, fuck me, Bone Daddy. And it's like, great, you've ruined everything.
Well, that's David and I have run Godplane, which is our original 5e horror campaign, and we've added in like stress mechanics, which we used in place of things like, because we did want the world to start impacting you. We didn't
it's
want
very
to use
hard to
stuff
balance
like
that,
sanity, right?
Yeah.
Like that wasn't, but it's stress. It's clear. It's just stress. And how do you?
If I can recommend something to you, the Alien system does a great stress mechanic that I recommend.
Yeah, we went with you can choose if you're going to roll against stress with either Constitution or Strength, or you can use Will, representing, are you physically trying to shake it off, or are you mentally trying to work through it? And then depending upon which of those you roll, there are consequences if you fail. So it's different depending on what you do. But like we had to have, and we found we've had to approach it very carefully, because we're like, this is not the That's What She Said campaign, right?
Yeah.
This is not the, if a mind flayer walks in, don't immediately go, whoop, Zoidberg, right? You're going to ruin that. Now, make the Zoidberg jokes after you've killed the Mind Flayer.
Exactly.
Make those jokes to break the tension, but we need y'all to work with us.
Timing is so important when it comes to these things. And as you said, like, you can make the jokes after. You can even make the jokes out of character, but if you're doing like a video show, you can't do them on camera because that pulls the audience out of it. It's like there's a discussion to be had about what APs are when it comes to both entertainment and a game aspect, because you're trying to play and enjoy it yourself, but it's also an audience that you're trying to pull into a narrative.
Yeah.
And so for stuff like that, it's like, yeah, you want to make the joke because everybody at the table is a little tense. It's a scary moment, but the point is the tension. The point is to be afraid.
And we got really lucky in that every time we've run it, we've had tables of people who get it. And there might be GIFs in the backroom chat, right? But then the GIF is referenced after the tension is broken.
Exactly, yeah.
We had drits that were boy love fan fiction being passed around on scrolls as a recurring gag in one of them, because people were like, this is how we're breaking the tension. And I'm like, there was genuine fear. We've on more than once when we've run it, people have been like, I'm concerned because I am known for my humor. And it's like, no, we want you to be funny. Just want you to be funny at the right times. Just
timing is the most. There's a big discussion about improv and its place in TTRPGs, and I think that TTRPGs have improv, but they are not improv, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody references the yes and but they miss the ticket of like, there's more than just yes and. There's yes but, there's no and, there's no but. And sometimes you just need no, where it's like, that's not happening for whatever reason. I'm not going to say what percentage it should be. It depends on the table. But like, I've had more than once where somebody says they're going to do a thing. And I'm like, that's not happening. I'm not going to explain why, but watch my horror videos. There've been some rough times. But it's not just on horror games either. There's a lot of times when you're trying to do a comedic game, like, and somebody comes in with something super depressing or dour, and it's like, no, man, that's not the time for this.
Vibe. You're killing the vibe.
I was playing a game that was supposed to be all queer joy, right? And we're all going around with our different characters who are not jokes, right? But had things to explore. And one character comes in and is like, my character is an exploration of grief. And I'm like,
this is not the season for you. It's like one of the ones I like to reference is there's a campaign that I've always wanted to run, but every time I've tried to start it up, it either dies in its infancy or fails after session 1 or 2. Crime noir game. You are all characters of separate familias trying to figure out who killed a Dawn because you want to prevent all-out war. And the one that always comes to my mind is everybody else actually made a person that represented like a mafia and like their speciality. And I gave out the reference document, and somebody comes in with a literal clown. I don't remember what name he was, but I always call it like McPiddles, whatever. He's like, I'm a pie-throwing clown from the clown mafia. And I'm like, are you shitting me? He's like, what? It doesn't work? I'm like, no, it does not work. And in a way, I don't want to sound like the old grognard DM, but I think there is a part where it's like, people don't respect any people at the table. The GM is a player at the table, and there's a give and take on respect. And it's sometimes very clear when somebody's like, I had an idea for a PC and I'm going to make it work in your game, or you have to make it work in the game instead of them make it like. Yeah.
Cricket Rick in with the absolutely perfect icon.
Which one?
Absolutely perfect. Cricket Rick just dropped a clown icon in chat, which is but no, and that is part of it. It is collaborative storytelling. It is collaborative world building. And I literally just had a call with the GM. Y'all, we just announced today we're doing Unlikely Heroes, which is a D&D 5e campaign. It's going to be running here starting September 11th. Adam So Wizard is our GM, and it's a bunch of Unlikely Heroes. September 14th. Thank you. What are time dates, y'all? It's been a little bit stressful.
Time is a flat circle.
It's not like you've been having, nonstop issues all day and are just currently trying to power through it or something.
It's been a wild day, y'all. But like, I had a talk where I'm like, this is the character I want to play. Does it fit? Because I'm like, I want it to be this. Does it fit? And the GM's like, yeah, there's actually, this world has lots of, I'm playing a character that involves eldritch horror. It's funny that we're mentioning that. And I'm like, does this work? Or should I adjust it to be more like necromancy? And he's like, oh no, this works great. And I'm like, awesome. And then we had a whole call and I'm like, okay, so this is what I've decided. Here's all the stuff that's a question mark. And it was like, he's like, okay, do you want this, this, or this? And I'm like, I don't care. If you want to tell me this works better for the game, like I want to leave enough room for you to say option B is the best for me, because I don't have a strong opinion. Now, if you say I just need an answer and I don't have a preference, cool. I can come up with a story, but I want there to be plenty of room. You know, I ended up going like, okay, well, all of these things could have happened and this could have happened. I don't know if it has, but here's like 5 different knives for you to stab me in the back with. And I really hope you do.
It's like there's that fun thing of like, there's a meme about like, oh, what's your backstory? Oh, I didn't make one. And there's a difference between I didn't make one because I want you, the GM, to be able to have fun with it, or I didn't make one because I wanted you to have nothing to do with me. Like that talk of like, everybody makes a character whose parents and family and everybody are dead. And it's like, are you doing that because you couldn't think of anything, or are you doing it because you had a bad GM in the past that weaponized it and now you don't want to engage with the world? When there's a whole conversation to be had on that.
Oh yeah. Well, and this particular character was supposed to play in another game, and one of my friends is like, what's the name? And I'm like, I don't actually know that this character like has a name. I think part of this is they lost their name. And Brenda's like, okay, do you really mean that, or you just not want to come up with a name? I'm like, no, my friend, I love names. David will tell you.
You're one of those people, you're like me, where you dig for the name. You got to find the perfect name.
Yeah, and this is like, this character's just like, I don't want it. And then finally, it took a lot of negotiation, but we got there. But like no, there's it is so much fun to work with your GM.
It is, and I think that it's a thing that's been kind of lost in the sauce. I did a big video about it recently, and there's somebody that was doing a really cool thread, and if I can find it, or if you guys can find it, it's in one of my videos, we can link into them. But it's become a point where a lot of players are unwilling to like take their shoes off at the door and admit that there's sometimes you have to make an acceptance to be part of a game. And GMs also need to make an acceptance, but like sometimes it's just, hey guys, I proposed a pirate adventure with you guys, and then everybody made people that don't want to swim. And it's like,
it's like
this doesn't work. It's read the room. It's like there's a prior example I did where it's like, I made a desert game that was going to be about like vehicle fighting, and somebody comes in with a pirate that needs water to live, like what the heck is the name of the frog? I can't remember what the name of the frog folk from D&D is right now.
Billy Bush Willie.
No, there's like an actual PC character. I can't remember what it is, but they basically have to hydrate themselves or they die.
Yeah.
And it's like, I made this, and I'm like, I'm going to let you know, if you want to play it, I'll let you play it, but you're going to die because there is not enough water to survive.
Are going to go by, and then you're going to be a shriveled husk.
And so
when a player makes a character that rejects the premise of the world, they are being jerks, not funny. I had a GM who proposed this whole game, and one of the players showed up and was like, I'm playing Knuckles from Sonic. And the GM's like, please don't play a meme character. And he's like, no, it'll be subtle. And there were multiple red flags about this person. Like, let me be clear, there were so many red flags, including in the session 0. Like, person has a bag of chips, not muted,
punching it,
just going to town, and
didn't
the
even
GM's like,
mute their mic.
Didn't mute their mic. The GM is like, hey buddy, there's a lot of background noise. And he's like, yeah, because I'm eating. And I'm like,
that would have been my first sign. Like,
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I bailed from that campaign. And like,
what do you say?
I bailed from that campaign,
mm-hmm.
but I did tune in for the first episode, right? There were also other circumstances in my life, and I did tune in for the first like bit to be like, it was not subtle, and clearly the GM was not happy about it, and it was just like,
There's a video I did on my thing. It's basically one of my baby DM videos where it's like me learning how to be a dungeon master, and it was my first real experience with somebody where like there were I called it the field of red flags. And it's like there were so many signs, but it was me being like, I can accommodate, I can burn myself out to make them have a good time. But what I didn't realize is by making that person happy, no one else was,
Yep.
including myself.
Yep.
But yeah, it comes to a point like I personally, there is a lot to be had about making a character based on a person to give you ideas. But if you're playing as just the person, you have nowhere to go because you're stuck in what they would do. And don't get me started on mean builds. Sometimes it's funny. I love the concept of power building and exploring a system, but there comes a point where it's like, hey, you're only doing this because it's powerful, not because it's what your character would do. And I hate it. I can't even say anything more than I just fucking hate it. But I lost my tangent of thought.
Oh no.
I burned out on just like the sheer volume of like going through that mental image of like all
I
this stuff.
I saw the pain. No, David knows I accidentally broke D&D 5e trying to build a character.
Yep.
Because I was like, what would come what background and experiences would create a character with this personality? With this, oh, it's a Ronk. Oh, by level 6, I've broken the game. Okay, I can't play this. I now play that character in Starfinder because I don't break the game in Starfinder.
And that's another thing. Is like there's a lot of concepts that work great in one system, but don't in another. And it could be either because mechanically or role play wise or whatever. And it just you got to find what works, and you can't ram one thing into another. But on the concept of just like making PCs again, because again my channel is about like finding things and developing. I personally hate it when people make, and this isn't to say people can't like prompt up an idea, but it raises my hackles, it pulls up my Irish, it makes me sad, whatever phrase you want to go with. When it's very clear that somebody is just pulling a thing they've read offline so they could be strong, it's like, but you're not being a person.
Yeah, like
I usually call it
theory
being
crafted this. And
it's like a
now you have the min-max build.
You are being a hodgepodge of mechanics and features stapled together with the veneer of I have a big sword. Call back to earlier, David.
Yep.
And
that is one of the downside of I love big sword is that is their entire personality.
And the thing is, oops, sorry.
Certain people can do that, right? If you watch Brennan Lee Mulligan play that ridiculous Harengon build,
The crit build, yep.
The crit build where blew everything and then like did something like 1,000 some odd points of damage in a singular turn.
Yep.
And then GM's like, okay, and they're like, okay, back to you, Brennan. And he's like, my character's asleep. Hey, Kato, like, my character's asleep. He blew everything he had to do. He exhausted himself. He's asleep for the rest of this battle. Y'all are on your own.
He did everything he could. He burned himself out, which in a way that works. And to Brennan's credit, he's usually very good about being like, you have a spectacular moment, but there's a repercussion.
Exactly.
To speak back to my home games, back to like the rule of cool thing, one of my things I usually go with is like, I will let you do something cool, but they usually have a cost. Mm-hmm. You want to have a cronk ton of damage, you're burning something, either life points, either spells, something. And that's a great example of like cool moment, but with a cost.
Well, and it used to be a stream game, but it's now a home game. I've been playing the Modifius system, and I am so lucky that I get to play with a GM who actually writes those games, so knows the system exceptionally well. And we're playing in a kind of steampunk industrial rise of industry, low magic setting. And I play a very powerful magic user, and we had to get through a picket line. There was a riot going on. People decided that we were with the cops, and they started turning on us.
Oh, you guys are, yep.
They'd, the cops had beat the crap out of these people, right? They'd been rioting, they'd been tear gassed, right? They were in bad shape. We're still intent on bringing the fight. I'm like, all right, I stand up, I pull out, my channel, my focus, I start to cast, and everyone's just like wincing because my character's offensive magic is real gnarly, right? Like it was going to be real bad.
Yep.
And everyone's braced. And I'm like, and I cast a mass healing spell and I heal every rioter within 30 feet of us. And the GM's like, that's really cool. But like the common people are afraid of magic. And I'm like, they have a system called momentum where if you beat, there are a certain number of checks. So it's a roll under system and you roll multiple D20s. And if you get more successes than you need, you generate momentum. And if you have cool moments, you can generate momentum. And I'm like, I spend 2 momentum to change a truth in this particular scene that they will understand my intent behind this and not be afraid of this magic.
That you're trying to like show them that you guys aren't here to start a fight. You're just trying to get through. Honestly, to leap off of that, that actually ties back to a bigger concept I've been trying to go, where it's like in a lot of TTRPGs, people view an obstacle as a thing that must be defeated instead of a thing that must be solved. And that's an example I would put as like, that was a fight, but it also wasn't a fight. You found a way to get to it. And I'm not saying that every fight needs to stop and everybody needs to hug, kiss, and cuddle, but sometimes it is nice to have a fight where you find a solution that isn't immediately just eviscerating a person. I will say that sometimes people go the exact opposite way and they refuse to have any conflict at all, which also is annoying as hell. I'm sorry, guys. We've been building up to this for the past 6 in real months. You're not going to persuade the big bad evil guy to not do the ritual. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
But you know how that goes.
Absolutely.
Instead, you cast haste.
No, you ask them if you can cast haste on them and then stop casting haste. We've all seen that trick.
Yeah,
Side tangent. I will say
I did that to someone.
Yeah, I think we've all seen that meme. Side tangent.
We've all seen the timeline.
We've all seen the time. I think I've said it a couple times. I work at a game and comic shop, so I've run public games for years, and I actually had to stop running public games because I was just so tired of people that would watch a TikTok or a thing or whatever. It's like, well, you see, my character was in the Feywild for years, and they were able to pass this sword down to their children. And then he would walk out the Feywild, and he went back in, and he would take the sword, and now it's this powerful sword. And I'm like, no, but it says you can do it. I'm like, I don't. And I just
there was a great like post on Twitter that was like, you can just say that your character is a higher level. Like when you start the campaign, you can just say your character is level 10. There's nothing the GM can do to stop that in the rules. And I'm like,
God. You know, the one that got
the rules is written. There's nothing you can do to stop that. That doesn't mean they need to play with you.
So there's a funny thing is like, I said before, I really like rules, and so every time I see somebody's like, a lot of times the people post memes and it's like, and I'm like, that's not true for these reasons. Like, you don't have to disprove a meme. It's a joke. I'm like, no, people are going to think it's real because that's how people read memes these days. The one that I distinctly remember that like broke my brain a bit was, technically you can play as a sentient pile of dust because disintegrate doesn't kill your character. It just turns you into dust. So if you pass the saves, you can be a sentient pile of dust. And I'm like, no, because when you're disintegrated, you're dead. That's how it works. And it's just, oh my God. As much as I enjoyed D&D, there's a lot of times where the D&D players are just the worst.
And David knows. Here's the thing. I was recently informed that someone was afraid to talk to me on Twitter because they thought I was like, I had too many followers or something, like I was too big or whatever.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, but you're this, so you've got, oh, you're a great GM, so you've got And I'm like, okay, I'm a passable GM. And number 2, I am so particular about who I play with because my poor little, like, I am still a baby GM in many senses. And if I run a bad table, it doesn't matter. Like, if anyone else tells me the horror story, I'm like, that's a player's fault, not you. If I'm that GM, no, it's my fault.
It's your fault. Yeah.
Have fun, and it's my bad.
It's literally with you right there. The amount of times I've been like, everybody like, no, that's not your fault. They came at you with bad intentions. Like, no, it's my fault because I could have made it work. It's like, sometimes I still have that problem. It's just, you got to realize sometimes it's you, though it is very important that sometimes you do have to recognize when it is you. So prefacing that now, because again, a lot of people think that if you advocate for GMs, it means that you only care about GMs. No, I want everyone to have a good time. I just also know that sometimes GMs get the rough end of the stick these days, but that doesn't mean that GMs are infallible because there are people out there that are weaponizing their power and authority, and it's important to recognize that. But
I like to think that my ego is indestructible, not because I have an enormous ego, but because I feel like I'm very realistic about myself and my abilities and what I'm good at and not good at. And when I tell you that I ran a table that did enormous damage to my pride as a GM.
I kept telling David, this is not on you. This is not on you. And of course, you can't believe it until you're out of it, right?
But
Yeah.
but like you put thing in front of player, and they're like, no, I'm not going to interact with that. And then you put another thing in front of player, and they're like, I'm not going to interact with that either. And then they're like, so why are you bad at this? And they don't even go, why are you bad at this? They tell someone else at the table, why is
That
this
you're
person
bad
bad
at
at this? And I'm like,
and that's honestly, I don't know if you guys get if Chad, if you get the chance, I actually did a video on how to be a better player, and one of the biggest things I said in that was engage. In how to be an amazing player is to engage with the game. I referred to something I called as hoppitism, which is when people have to be pushed into the narrative. When you make a person that's like, my character wouldn't do that, it's not interesting to do that. It's cool to read in a book because you're the only person reading the book. But when you have 4 other people that want to play, and it's the only time they get to play every other week, them having to force and cajole you to join in on the expectation of the table is not fun.
We have done an entire episode on how to play an edge monarch, edge lord, edge lady. It can be done. You have to do it correctly. You can't do it like in media. They have to be like, you all sleep, I'll stand guard. I don't sleep anyway. Let everyone sleep. And then you go behind the tree, you're like, oh my God, I think they like me. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Do they think it's like that thing
Gotta
from
show there's a nougaty center.
It's like that scene from Inside Out where that one girl that's trying to be cool, and then she's like, do they know that we're making this up? No, they don't. We're wearing eyeshadow. It's like, yeah.
yep.
I was having a conversation. I was like, it's entirely possible to play an evil character and not have everyone else at the table hate your guts. They can, their characters can hate your guts, but they can enjoy playing with you. It's entirely possible to be like, yeah, my character is a dirty pickpocketing thief, but he knows if he pisses off these guys, he's not going to have any allies.
I play an absolute self-centered asshole.
Exactly.
Absolute self-centered asshole. High-strung. I specifically set up moments for my party to take pot shots at them. I specifically set them up for people to be able to just hurt their pride, and they just stand there and take it.
Because it makes them feel better.
And there is nothing that compares to the joy on Richard's face when he realizes, oh boy, it's time to go at soul. And he's always the last one. He waits for everyone else to get their licks in, and he spends the whole time, and he's just like
formulating it. Yep.
But yes, you want to know how to be a great player. You want to know how to get invited to tables. I'll tell you how I get invited to tables. I am in everyone else's characters. It is my turn to do a thing, and I'm like, okay, we got a plan. So-and-so, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Hey, you've been real quiet. What do you think? And then I do stuff like this.
Exactly. That was in the thing of like, if you want people to enjoy your experience, engage with them and have them pulled with you. The world isn't about you. I know it's a meme, but if you give other people moments to be amazing and help them do that, they will be more than likely to help you have amazing moments where you get to do cool shit. If you want to have a character as an asshole, have that character be like, I'm an asshole, but I'm your asshole. I may be a despicable asshole, but hey, that guy that had the thing we needed, I got it for you. Now, can you help me go beat up this guy that beat me up when I did dice last week? That's how you do it.
And play an asshole who's useful.
Thank you.
Because if you're playing an asshole who also can't help in combat, then what good are you?
Okay, so for the watchers at home, one, thank you for putting up with my voice. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for talking to me. If you do watch my videos, fortunately, you won't have to look at this. I'm instead a very adorable fox person. If you haven't guessed by my coterie of stuffed animals,
this, so
I prefer to be the fox person instead. It's much more appealing than this. I'm very aware of what I look like. But there is a horror story that I haven't done a video on that I'll probably do, but the gist of it is I played at a table with a guy whose biggest fetish was being an inconvenience. He loved making
I hate those people so much in my...
Oh yeah, we're getting there. So I'm not saying you can't make something that's not amazing with the thing. There's a difference between like min-maxing and just being like role-playing. I mean, he intentionally wanted to make somebody that was so bad that he actively made everybody else's life worse. Like, I don't watch a lot of her content, but Ginny D has a character where she's a warlock and she's not like min-maxed out. There's a difference between like having a character that's having fun and what this guy did. He would make a wizard and then intentionally ask the DM if he could have a 3 in intelligence, and then say, oh, by the way, my character is disabled. He can't walk. People have to carry him. And just everything he could do to make your life harder, and then actively via the roleplay be like, oh, everybody's currently trying to keep an eye out for a monster. Well, my character will make an illusionary sound off in the distance so that people get split up or whatever. And it's like the worst kind of person to play with. And I will say, as a person that both GMs, DMs, and interprets all that, and as a player, you have to know when to step in as a GM and be like, hey, no.
Yeah.
I still plan on doing that as a story one of these days, but the crux of it is, oh my God, that is one of the worst things. I typically call them the escort mission. The players that want you to make the world about them.
Yeah. We need to wrap up because I know we've kept you here for quite a bit. No. This is just I do want to say, like, this was not a game I ran, but it was a situation where I'm like, I need to fix this, in my one shots going forward. I did one shot run by an incredibly gifted GM friend of mine. It was wonderful. She introduced me to a module that I have run several times on this stream, and I love it. We had a person who showed up and was like, oh, we all meet in the tavern, right? And then a thing happens and you're supposed to go. It's obvious that you're supposed to interact with the thing.
It's a one shot. You just go with it.
Right. And this person's like, oh, well, my character is a secret agent and she has a double identity and she wouldn't go to this thing because she doesn't want her second identity revealed.
It's like, great. So everybody walks off without you. And then I turn off your camera and then we have the whole adventure without you.
Exactly.
Literally, I have a story that I did about this where literally I made an entire one shot where the crux of it was there were goblin sheep rustlers. They broke into a farm. They were capturing sheep on horseback. They were going to run them off. It was supposed to be a fun little like cowboyish game. Players walk in, see that there's a guy dead, see them rustling the sheep, walk up to one of them, stops him from escaping, walks up to him, asks if they have any drugs, buys the drugs off of them, and then say, cool, we're going to leave that and go smoke these drugs in an inn. Describe what we see. And I'm like, and then I literally closed my book and said, cool, that was your guys' solution. We're done. And it's like, what do you mean we're done? We still have an hour and a half. I'm like, no, we had an hour and a half to run this one shot, and you found your solution to the one shot by not playing.
Right. And like, you go off, you smoke the drugs, you are high for the next hour and a half. Good day.
Yeah. And you tell me, actually don't even tell me. Tell each other what you saw.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I'm not doing Bill and Ted's Excellent Drug Trip. I was here to run a cowboy goblin one shot that I thought you might engage with. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And yeah, I've said, if I as a GM come in and completely fuck your character's couch, if I do some really horrible reveal that, your entire family is dead when you thought they were alive and well, that so-and-so betrayed you, that like, oh, actually someone on the team was trying to betray you the whole time. Like if I do some horrible thing to your character, then you have every right to come to me and say, hey, GM, I'm having a really hard time wanting to stay with this party. Help me out. But until the GM does something like that, it is your job as a player to make your character want to be there. And also, it is not the other player's responsibility to constantly be convincing your character to go with them.
Exactly. It's interesting in The Hobbit that he has to be convinced to go on the trip. It is the Hobbit movie, right? It's interesting that he has to be convinced because that's the whole point of the story. But once he's on the journey, he goes. He doesn't stop every 10 minutes and go, oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Knock it off.
I brought in to Starfinder, I brought in my kind of edgy loner character, right? I sat down with the GM. I'm like, look, my goal is for this character to trust people and to have friends and to want to be with the party. They're going to resist it in character. I, as the player, am committed to keeping this character here. I am not going to put, and even at one point, they did a whole talk about like, after this mission, I'm leaving. Finished that scene and I went, players, they're not leaving.
Not actually leaving.
You don't have to beg them to stay. I'm not putting any of that on you. This is character development. Like, I want you to be clear in that. And
exactly.
That is your job as a player.
there's a thing I did in my other video as well, where it's like, I love that we keep accidentally saying the exact same things I said, where one of the big things was you cannot weaponize the fact that players know that you cannot leave them. You cannot make it so that people know that, oh, this person's awful. We don't enjoy their company. They've made us upset. But we as players outside the table can't leave their character behind. And it's not fair to weaponize that. So it's important to be able to realize that you can make things like that without ruining everybody else's time.
Yeah.
The meta knowledge, people talk about meta knowledge all the time, but I think that's one of the big things that people have to recognize is we're all here trying to have fun. Don't ruin that fun because you know we can't leave you.
Yeah. Well, and other side of the spoon, we had a player who was, their character had been through hell and they were like burning out on that character. We're kind of like, I kind of want to play something else. So the GM set them up to give their character this wonderfully terrible death that was incredibly impactful, brought two different groups
Story
together,
threads. Yep.
and then gave, it was like, bring in your new character. We show up and there is a random new character causing a scene, and I found an excuse to go and adopt the character into the group, right? And we get to the end of the session, the guy's like, you realize you just like adopted like a tourist, basically. And I'm like, well, yeah, if it were an NPC, it wouldn't have happened, but it was a player character. So we bend reality.
We found
to
the
make sure
reason
you
to
get
make it
join.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you do that for each other, or else you're a jerk and not a good player. There is a lot of.
We all know it's a game, and you have to. It's like when you're watching a movie. I know that a lobster can't sing in a Jamaican accent, but I accept that's going to happen because I want to enjoy the movie. When you're playing a TTRPG, you accept that that person's being weird, but we want them to join us because they want to play. You make
David has an
allowances
opinion.
for the game to work.
All I'm saying is when I'm watching video of the Winter Olympics and the Jamaican bobsled team is going, and then there's a cutaway to a lobster sitting on a chair, I'm assuming that lobster has a Jamaican accent.
That's
That
fair.
took a leap I wasn't expecting.
But yes, I am a defender to certain extents of that is what my character would do, because there are very good my character did not use offensive magic against working class people who were rioting for better conditions. That is not what that character would have done. I had to spend an in-game resource, right? And if those resources hadn't been available, I would have worked with the GM to figure out how can I make this successful, because my character would not attack normal
Defenseless
working class people. They would try and do this. That is how you do that, is what my character would do.
There's a big difference from that's what my character would do and I'm using it as an excuse, and that's what my character would do and I'm explaining why.
Yes.
And that's a big split. Like we were talking, me and David earlier, we're talking about how a word's been kind of co-opted to mean something differently. And I feel like that's what my character would do has no longer become an explanation and has become more of a shield for consequence.
Exactly.
You can totally have a character be like, my character sees this important thing and steals it, and be like, my character would do that. They're broke, hungry, and this would feed their family for their life. Or it could also be tangentially, I'm bored, I'm going to steal a thing and ruin this moment for everybody else. And there's a difference between the two. For example, and an example of somebody that made characters that also irked me, I played in a Curse of Strahd game. Very horrible story, lots of awful things, but one of the characters kept dying because he kept making stupid decisions. And so he kept caring less and less about his character because they kept dying, which cyclical means they kept dying. Made a barbarian, dumped intelligence, all that fun stuff. Decided my character is dumb. He'd be interested in what the statue sounds like if I push it over, knowing full well that me and another player were underneath the very, very long drop. And then
on the
we
front
luckily
lawn, get your mouth guard.
Luckily the GM was very much like giving us an out by like they could dodge it. Here's a roll, knowing we could do it. But in character and out of character, I'm like, what is your fucking problem? We're in Barovia. Like, trying to not give spoilers for people that haven't played it. You don't mess around in Barovia. It is very easy to die in Barovia. It is one of the only D&D campaigns I can think of where dying is always at the other turn. And it's like healing, all that, very hard to do in Barovia. And he's like, it's what my character would do. And I'm just like, your character, even people that have been feeble-minded, which is one intelligence, knows who their friends are. You would know better than that. But I don't want to get into that thing. I know we're wrapping up here.
Yeah.
I just want to thank chat so much for listening to me talk about this stuff and rambling. I have a video that it's either going to be coming up in 2 weeks about Pokemon Tabletop United, if I can get my new computer to work, which I'm very excited about. It's going to be basically I'm doing a 3-part series, hopefully, which is going to be here's the rules of the system, like a general overview. I can't go into everything. It is a 300-page book. But it's going to be a general rules thing. I'm going to do a little synopsis on how to make a character, how to make a Pokemon, and discussing how combat works. And then, as a little side tangent, there's also things that do Pokemon contests, which is its own subsystem, which I'm like, I'm going to do that because, not going to lie, I've always wanted to play in a Pokemon contest.
Excellent. So yes, as we are wrapping up, we have that. Remind us again who you are and where we can find you.
Hi there, guys. Again, I'm Rayne Grimm, your friendly internet fox. I operate Fennec Fables, a fun little bar where you can come on down, sit, and have me share some fun little TTRPG tidbits, share a story, tell you a yarn, or maybe even convince you that, hey guys, maybe you can use a trap to make your players want to explore more. If you can come on down, the link should be showing up in their chat for you right now. I also have Twitter and Blue Sky where I post TTRPG prompts to try to get your noodle going a little bit. And I also have an Etsy where I share really cool stickers I sell. 1 second. I actually got a little box right here. If you like punk aesthetic and TTRPGs, you can always check them out.
Oh, cute. All right. Thank you, Rayne, so much. I apologize I was not here for the first half of this.
It's okay. You let us talk about monster fucking.
Right? That...
It always comes back to monster fuck.
I know. I really should be disturbed by how often that happens on this channel, but you know, I'm just gonna roll with it.
If they stopped
because...
making the monsters so big and hot, it would happen. It wouldn't happen anymore.
Yeah,
no, it still would.
Venom didn't have
still
that
would.
tongue.
It still would
I'm
happen.
gonna say I think that Venom is like level 1 monster fucking. I'm talking like Eldritch Horror stuff.
Yeah. Look, it's tentacles.
It always comes back to tentacles.
We can chart how old you are by when Tim Curry represented your sexual awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Legend.
Right.
Legend.
Because some people it's Roxy Horror, some people it's Legend. But if the
people?
literal environmental sludge monster in Fern Gully was your sexual awakening.
You mean as he sung Toxic Love and had some of the best animation? Yes. Yes. Fun fact, I saw Rocky Horror Picture Show first, but I'm just not a fishnets person. But
fair. But yeah, in case you don't know, Rayne, one of my claim to fame was I used to be the lead moderator for DeviantArt. So I can assure you,
you've seen it all.
I've seen it all. I know a lot about monster fucking, and Venom is definitely level 1, and it doesn't matter how not sexy you try to make the monster.
People will find it sexy.
Can't help it. But yes, on that note,
you see everything on those.
Exactly. But yes, on that note, y'all, hi, I am Kay. I am flustered and having a day, but we are so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. Come on by Thursday when David and I are going to be playing, continuing our playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. We are nearing the end, I think. We are deep into Act 3, so if you need to avoid spoilers, please be aware. I'm actually not streaming this Friday because I have a networking thing I have to do, so we'll see if David is going to do more
it's probably gonna be Deadlock. It's probably gonna
Deadlock.
Be Deadlock.
It locked
Deadlock
in on
got me
Deadlock
by parts I didn't know I had.
I have lots of other stuff going on that I just can't talk about yet. But we'll be right back here the following Tuesday with Jen Stutcliffe to talk about projects, and then coming up on the 14th, which is next Saturday, it is going to be myself, Candace the Magnificent, Piper, Matt from Improv and RPG, with storyteller, dungeon master, extraordinaire, Adam So Wizard. We are going to be playing Unlikely Heroes, which is a 5e game with some very unlikely heroes. And y'all, I cannot wait for you to see what all we're playing. My character is ridiculous and a character I've been trying to play for literal years. I've had 3 games I've tried to play this character and cancel. So
You love to
will
see
it
when
finally
finally
happen? We'll see if my internet goes out again. David, who the heck is you and what the heck have we been doing here?
Hi, I am very pleased that chat held my hand while I was ungoverned. And this is the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity, so that everybody can have a good time.
So thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Rayne, for coming on and sharing so many great stories. I can't wait to go back and watch the video and watch all the Pokemon stuff that I missed. I'm so angry at my internet, y'all. I was so excited to talk about Pokemon art.
You know, all that means is you have to invite me to come back.
It's a requirement.
I'm going to take that as my chance to be, hey, maybe you have to invite me back and I'll talk about it some more.
Right. We'll have to not be in October because I will probably miss at least a couple of those because your friend is
I'm going to Disney in October, so I'm going to miss it.
All right, y'all. We are going to go raid over to Entropy Emporium, where every other Friday I get to play Brandon, who should be a meme character, but I'm literally playing the Stoner Ranger weed dealer who just gets like pulled along with the adventure. Meme character, but again, has a backstory and has
a reason to be there.
Exactly. So thank you all again for hanging out with us. Thank you again, Rayne. Remember, y'all, be kind to yourself, be excellent to others, and we will see you next time.
Cheers, y'all. Bye.